In this video, we're going to be reviewing the January 2016 Algebra 1 Regents, questions 1 through 12. Okay, question 1 asks, in the function f of x equals x minus 2 squared plus 4, the minimum value occurs when x is which number? And when we're looking at minimum and maximum values, so I see there's a 2 here. So that means that this is quadratic, and our graph is either going to look like a parabola opening upwards, or it's going to look like a parabola opening downwards. Okay, so it's going to be one of these options. If it's opening upwards, it has a minimum. And if it's opening downwards, it has a maximum. So this just wants to know what that point is, and I'm going to use our graphing calculator for that. So go to y equals, type this in, x minus 2 squared plus 4, second graph, and now we're looking for we're looking for a pattern in the y when the numbers start to repeat. So we see up at the top we have 8. But looking at the y, so we go 8, 5, 4, 5. So see how it goes 5, 4, 5, and then above it and below it have the same pattern. It goes 4, 5, 8, goes 4, 5, 8, 13, 20. If I scroll up, I'm probably going to see 13 and 20. There we go. All right, it's the same on both sides. So that's telling us that we have a minimum here at 4. And then from 4, it's going to go back up on both sides. And if we look at the graph, we should see something like that. So we see that at 4, it starts going up again. So here our minimum is 4. Okay, question number 2. The graph below was created by an employee at a gas station. Which statement can be justified by using the graph? If 10 gallons of gas was purchased, $35 was paid. Well, let's see. We have gallons at the bottom here. So if I go to 10 and then I go up, do we land on 35? Not quite, right? Because technically we're landing a little bit above 35 at like 37 maybe, but not directly on 35. So it cannot be 1. Okay, number 2, for every gallon of gas purchased, $3.75 was paid. So we want to go to 1 now, and we can see that it's definitely not going to be, well, we can't fully tell, right? So here's 1, and if we go up, it's going to be somewhere here. So it's going to be somewhere between 0 and 5. We can't fully tell what that is. So we're going to have to use the rate of change. We're going to have to find the rate of change to figure that out. So pick any 2 points. I'm going to definitely pick 0, 0 because that makes life easy. I'm also going to pick a point that is on a corner that's easier to look at. In this case, I'm going to pick the point 415. And now I'm going to find the rate of change between these 2 points. So I like labeling them x1, y1, x2, y2. And remember, the formula is y2 minus y1 divided by x2 minus x1, which is essentially just the change in y divided by the change in x. You subtract the y's, you subtract the x's, and then you divide. So let's subtract the y's first. We get 15 minus 0. Now subtract the x's. We get 4 minus 0, which is just 15 divided by 4. And always check small math like this on your calculator. Why not? We get 375. Okay, and 2 says, yeah, so for every gallon of gas purchased, 375 was paid. So the answer is going to be 2. we can tell that it's not going to be 3 because if it was 2 gallons, it would be twice $3.75. It would be $7.50, not $5, based on the formula we just used. And if 0 gallons of gas were purchased, 0 miles were driven. So this is talking about gas purchased. Purchased is the big word here. This graph says nothing about how many gallons were purchased. All it says about is the cost and the miles driven. It says nothing about miles driven. So all it says is about the cost and the gallons. It's not talking about driving at all, so it can't be 4. Okay, question number 3. For a recently released movie, the function y equals 119.65 times 0.61 to the x power models the revenue earned, y, in millions of dollars each week, x, for several weeks after its release. Based on the equation, how much more money in millions of dollars was earned in revenue for week 3 than for week 5? Okay, so in this case, x is representing the weeks. So all we need to do is take 3 and 5 and substitute it in for x. And instead of doing that one by one, I'm going to use y equals here. So I go to y equals and I type in 119.67 parenthesis 0.61 to the x power. And I'm going to go to the table. So now I'm going to find when x is 3. So when x is 3, y is 27.163. So let's write that down. At 3, we have 27.163. And at week 5, we have 10.107. And this question is asking how much more. So we want to figure out how much more was at 3 than at 5. So to do that, we're going to subtract. If we're looking at this very quickly, we should see it should be somewhere around 17. And the only option that is 17 is 3, right? Because we're going to get 17.0, and then that's where now you have to start working backwards. You borrow from the 6, that's 5, 13. We get 6 and 5, and rounded, you get 17.06. Okay, question number 4. Which expressions result in an irrational number? Okay, remember, rational are whole numbers, integers, fractions, and decimals that end or repeat, right? And by end, I mean like 3.14. By repeat, I mean 3.141414, on and on. And irrational is a decimal that doesn't end and doesn't repeat. For example, pi, which is 3.14159 ... Okay, so which expressions here result in an irrational number? So I'm going to use my graphing calculator for this. So the first is -5 divided by 8 plus 3 divided by 5. Enter. We can see we get a decimal here, but the decimal ends. It does not go on forever. So 1 is not an option, meaning 3 is not our answer. Okay, 2. Let's do 1 divided by 2 plus the square root, so second x squared, 2. Okay, so you do see a decimal here. It does look very long. There is no pattern to it, but just to make sure, I'm going to press just math. So press math, go to fraction, and press enter. So because that was not able to be written as a fraction, 2 is an answer choice, which means that 2 cannot be our answer. All right, let's check option number 3. We got the square root of 5. Make sure to close out that parenthesis. That's super, super important. Times, you have to do a different square root. So second x squared again, 5, close parenthesis, enter. And here we just get an integer, right? And an integer is rational, not irrational. So it cannot be 3. Meaning that our answer can't be 4 now, so 1 is the only option. And without even using a calculator here, the square root of 49 is 7, and then we get 21, which is also rational. Question number 5. Which inequality is represented by the graph below? Okay, so based on this, we can see there are 2 different equations here. So looking at the line crosses the y-axis right here at -3, meaning that it cannot be 3 or 4 because that says +2. And now we need to determine if it's 1 or 2. And the difference between 1 and 2 that we see are these symbols. We got less than and we got greater than. So whenever you have less than or equal to or less than, you shade down. And whenever you have greater than or equal to or greater than, you shade up. So looking at this line, we can see that this was shaded above the line, making it need to be greater than, and our answer choice 2. Okay, question number 6. Michael borrows money from his uncle, who is charging him simple interest using the formula I equals PRT. Okay, and I equals PRT. We have I being the interest. We have P being the principal, which is basically like the starting money. We have R, which is the rate, and we have T, which is the time. And if I just kept reading this question, I would have realized we didn't need to know all that because it says to figure out what the interest rate R is, Michael rearranges the formula to find R. So I'm going to go ahead and erase that now. That's what happens when you don't fully read the question. All right. So instead we're going to do, so I equals PRT. They want us to solve for R. So they basically just want us to get R alone. And as you can see, we're doing P times R times T. So the opposite of times is to divide. We're going to divide both sides by P and T because that'll allow us to cross the P out on the right and the T out on the right. And now we're left with R. So we have R equals I divided by PT, and that is option 3. Okay, question 7. Which equation is equivalent to y minus 34 equals x times x minus 12. Okay, and I'm going to do a little bit of solving here. I'm going to add 34 on both sides just so that y is isolated. So now we have y equals x times x minus 12 plus 34. Because now that y is isolated, we can use our graphing calculator. So I'm going to put that in first. X times x minus 12 plus 34. And then in y2, I'm going to put every answer choice. So we got x minus 17, and then x plus 2. I'm going to go to a second graph. And y1 and y2 are not equivalent, so it's not going to be 1. Go back to y equals. Now we got x minus 17 and x minus 2. So I'm just going to go ahead and change that sign to a minus and press second graph. Those tables are also not equivalent, so it can't be 2. And now I'm going to put option 3 in, which is pretty different. So parenthesis x minus 6 squared plus 2, second graph. Those tables are also not equivalent. So I really hope this one is, otherwise that might mean that I made a typo somewhere, and that's okay, that happens. All right, so now that instead of plus 2, that's minus 2. Second graph. And there we go. The y1 and y2, all of the numbers are the same, so our answer is 4. Okay, question 8. The equation A equals 1,300 times 1.02 to the 7th is being used to calculate the amount of money in a savings account. What does 1.02 represent in this equation? Okay, so this formula, which will be helpful to know this time, I promise. So we got A times I 1 plus or minus R to the T. Okay, and A is going to be like the amount of money. So like what the money is worth. I is the initial amount. 1 is just a standard number, but you're going to add or subtract to 1 based on if it's growth or decay. So I'm actually going to change the colors here. So we're adding if it's growth, and we subtract if it's decay. R is the interest rate. And T, running out of colors, is time. I know that's hard to see, but the thing that we're focused on right now is what's in the parentheses, right? So whenever the number in the parentheses is greater than 1, because we're adding, we have growth. So in this case, we have 1.02, which means it's greater than 1. So it has to be growth. So it can't be 1, and it can't be 3, right? And we need this to equal 1.02. So that would be 1 plus 0.02. Meaning that our rate is 0.02. But that's as a decimal. We want to change that to a percent. So 0.02 is equal to, you can multiply to do this, 0.02 times 100. and that's going to get us 2%. Alternatively, you could have just moved the decimal place twice to the right, and you would have gotten 2%, meaning that our answer is 2% growth, not 0.02%. Okay, question 9. The zeros of this function are, okay, so we go to y equals. We're going to put this into our graphing calculator. 2x squared minus 4x minus 6, second graph. And we're looking for where y is 0. That happens at x is -1 and x is 3. So our answer is -1 and +3. Choice 1. Question 10. When 2x minus 3 squared is subtracted from 5x squared, the result is. So let's write that out first. So we want to subtract this, 2x minus 3 squared, from 5x squared. So that means we're going to take 5x squared and subtract 2x minus 3 squared from that. Now you can simplify this. You can also use the graphing calculator here. So I'm going to do the simplifying by hand, and then I'll check it using the graphing calculator. So the first thing I see here is 2x minus 3 squared. That can be rewritten as 2x minus 3 times 2x minus 3. And now you can multiply this using FOIL, right? So 2x times 2x gives us 4x squared. That's the first, the outside now. 2x times -3 is -6x. Inside, -3 times 2x is -6x again. And last, -3 times -3 is +9. So we get 4x squared minus 12x plus 9, which means we have 5x squared minus 4x squared minus 12x plus 9. And yes, I kept the parentheses because they're very important here, because we are not only subtracting 4x squared, we're subtracting every term inside. So what do I mean by that? 5x squared minus 4x squared minus -12x and minus 9. Okay, 5x squared minus 4x squared gives us x squared. Minus -12 becomes positive 12x minus 9, making our answer choice 3. But to check that, go into y equals, put your original, which is now 5x squared minus 2x minus 3 squared. And this is similar to one of the previous ones we did. Just put in every single answer choice, but in y2, if I put in choice 3, x squared plus 12x minus 9, this should be the answer. And this is a good way to check it, because if it's not, then you know you made a mistake somewhere. Okay, but in this case I didn't. y1 and y2 have the exact same y values, so we're good. The answer is 3. Okay, question 11. Joe has a rectangular patio that measures 10 feet by 10 feet. I'm just going to start drawing that because that helps me. So we got, 10 feet by 12 feet. So that's not really going to be a good diagram. So 12 by 10. Great. He wants to increase the area by 50% and plans to increase each dimension by equal lengths x. So I'm increasing each side by a value of x that we don't know yet. And I'm just drawing, okay? So that would be like the new patio. And plans to increase each dimension by equal lengths x. Which equation could be used to determine x? So we know here at the top, we have 12, and we have x, making this whole length x plus 12. Similar happening here, we have 10. We have x, making this whole length 10 plus x. So we know that we have a length of x plus 12 and a width of, should probably put x plus 10. We have a width of x plus 10. And area is length times width. So we need to do length of x plus 12 times the width of x plus 10. Meaning that 3 and 4 are not our answer choices. Okay. And he wants to increase the area by 50%. But we have to increase it from a value to begin with. So the original area is 120. And I know that because of 12 times 10. Right? So the original area is 120. What's 50% more of that? Well, what's 50% of 120? That's what's going to be half, right? So 120 divided by 2 is 60. So 50% of 120 is 60. But it's 50% more. So 120 plus 60 gives us 180, meaning that this needs to equal 180. And that is option 2. Okay, and the last question we're going to do for this video is number 12. When factored completely, that x cubed minus 3x squared minus 30x is which one? This is another graphing calculator question, but I am going to practice this one by hand as well before I check my answer using the graphing calculator. So in this case, I notice that every term has an x, meaning I can factor an x out. So when I factor an x out, x times x squared gives us x cubed. And I know that because the x I factored out has an imaginary exponent of 1. And when you multiply, you have to add the exponents. So 1 plus 2 is 3. Okay, so I factored an x out. X times x squared gives us x cubed minus x times 13x will give us 13x squared. And now I need just 30x here, so minus 30. So now if you go backwards and you were to distribute, we would get this. Right, but now I need to factor what's in the parentheses here. And to do that, I'm going to find all the factor pairs of negative 30, and then which one adds to negative 13. So we got 1 times negative 30, negative 1 times positive 30, 2 times 15, negative 15, negative 2 times positive 15, 3 times 10, negative 10, negative 3 times positive 10, and then 5 times negative 6, and negative 5 times positive 6. So all of those numbers multiply to negative 30, but looking through them a bit more carefully, I'm looking for what adds to negative 13. That's going to be this pair right here, the 2 times negative 15. So now I'm going to get x times x plus 2 times x minus 15. And I know that because 2 is positive and that's where this plus 2 came from. And 15 was negative, and that's where this negative 15 came from. Making our answer 3. But let's check that. It's always important to check your answer. Mistakes do happen. So I'm going to put the original x cubed minus 13x squared minus 30x in y1. And in y2, I'm going to put x parenthesis x plus 2 parenthesis x minus 15. Second graph, those tables are identical, so yes, that is answer choice 3. Okay, that was questions 1 through 12 on the January 2016 Algebra 1 Regents. The next video will have questions 13 through 24.